Hi. Mhm. So I'm not about to give you any formal speech or anything of that nature. This morning I just have woken up with a few thoughts on my. This is Dr. G, by the way. I've been enjoying my leave of absence since stepping down as the country coordinator for South Africa, and every now and again it's always very useful for us to step back, regain our strength, give ourselves some time to think and reflect and think about the revolution, its evolution, the progress that we've registered, and ultimately to be able to deeply reflect about our success prospects, what success is, what it looks like, it's going to look like when it comes, and establishing what progress we have registered, what adjustments we may need to make in order to define the course, kind of drop the course for the ship to head towards the desired dock. A lot of people, I mean, people, that the fact that we have a just cause does not guarantee that we're going to succeed. It is the fact that we engage in a resistance movement does not predefine the outcomes. It is a collection or the combination of actions that we undertake that is going to define the speed of our progress and the kind of outcomes of those progress. And it's also going to be a combination of the actions undertaken by the enemy in resistance to our initiatives. That's also going to determine the speed of our progress and define the outcomes of the resistance movement. So I've been thinking very deeply in the last couple of days. I mean, sometimes just being quiet affords me the possibility of looking back at everything that we have done. And I must say upfront that we have registered a lot of progress. Um, the one thing that I was just reading a book this morning, by the way, this is a nice one which I recommend for all of us to read. It's a book by Joseph Martino. It's called Resistance to Tyranny. Uh, um, we have a responsibility to educate ourselves about our struggle, about its evolution, and what we can learn from strategies from all over the world from resistance struggles. I want to make a couple of comments this morning about just some observations of mine. Unlike previous instances, my observations are not not going to focus too much on introspection, looking inward into the revolution because as far as the inner workings of the revolution is concerned, I personally have come to a place where I've taken a few steps back to really observe and try and put my finger on what is it that we are doing and where is it that we can make about changes. There are a lot of our people that have admirable consistency, and we need those people. I mean, next to those people, I just feel like a dwarf. I have a lot of courage and admiration for people who can just pick a course of action and stick to it. I fall in the category of people that I need to see that something is working for me to continue to be engaged in it. I need to see that whatever activity I've undertaken um, it's producing the desired results. So before I continue to invest myself, I think I owe that to myself. It makes me sleep well at night. I think that I owe that to my family and my loved ones because it gets me to be able to justify the risk associated with my activities. And then I owe it to our people in terms of making sure that we do not continue to encourage activities and processes that will not help us get to our destination. And as far as that is concerned, I need to say that with only unreserved from an unreserved perspective, I think we've done uh, relatively well in so many aspects. And I want to salute the efforts of all the comrades that have been engaged in this process up to this point moving forward. I have two comments that I just want to bring through. When I listened to the interview that Nijon Frundi gave to Mimime for 2 days ago, um, it kind of crystallized a fear that I've always had as far as this struggle is concerned, which is the realization that everybody is feeding off the struggle. Okay, Maurice Kamto is feeding off our struggle to be able to pursue the agenda of regime change, of replacing Biya, emerging as the frontline opposition. Kawala, um, Agbobala, let me reserve Agbobala because I think he's one of us in so many ways. But when you look at the pre-existing structures of mobilization within Ground Zero, I'm thinking about your SDFs and the CPDMs of the world. Uh, they are the one people that have been caught up off guard by the evolution of the struggle. For the simple fact that a main principal movement of change has been driven, organized, and orchestrated from forces outside of themselves. Now, do not forget that for the last 10, 20, 30 odd years, these pundits of the regime, Southern Cameroonians within the SDF and within the CPDM, and breakoffs of the SDF and of the CPDM, like our last party of the CPP, have been the faces of change, have been the political movement for transformation. And they have kind of evolved to the point where they have um, abrogated onto themselves a sense of entitlement to be the strategic stakeholders by which change is going to come. So when I listened to Fundi's speech yesterday, this is what he summarily said. When you guys finish fighting, you would come back and meet us so that we can together decide what's going to happen moving forward. It was very amusing, but very real. Very real for the simple fact that there's a dimension of the resistance that has to do with the mobilization of the ground forces. Of course, I'm very confident that by the time we get into the space where we get active in our in political engagements for change, when the right conditions have been assembled, we are going to take the same kind of activism that we have prosecuted the struggle into political activism. So I don't think the SDF is going to be any match. No, all the existing structures within the Republic of Cameroon, neither the CPDM nor the SDF. If we succeed to get to a space where we push the resistance post a negotiation phase and get into the reconstruction phase, I think that with the same enthusiasm that we have prosecuted the struggle, we are going to ultimately be able to bring about some vibrancy in the political process. But that's a question for a different problem. The only challenge with such an eventuality is that, like myself and the majority of people who are prosecuting this revolution, we are not based back home. And the majority of us uh, are involved in this struggle as a gesture of goodwill. We do not depend on it for our future. Uh, a lot of us are not in this because we see a political career that can emerge out of this. A lot of us are in this because we are fully convinced that uh, uh, from our understanding of the way the world works, it is also important that we should contribute to building for ourselves a country that we can be proud of. Personally, that's like my biggest motivation. I think to myself that why not? If economic development can occur in Dubai or in Singapore, or in Thailand or in Malaysia or in any of these countries that we cite all the time, why can we not have it in Amazonia? Personally, that's my principal motivation. To translate this into a decision to move to the ground and participate in political contestation, it's a big jump. For a whole lot of us, it's not going to be we're not in the, for a whole lot of us, it's going to hardly be um, a decision that will be very easily made because the opportunity cost of that would have to come from a place of real love for motherland and we would have to do a lot of convincing of our wives and our families and our loved ones. And personally, I don't know about a lot of people, and I speak for myself. When if the attainment of independence for me is going to be a mission accomplished, I can go on with my life, write my books, write my articles, supervise my students, do my publications, serve God, do other things, and with the confidence that we have helped to bring in capable men into the fold that would have the possibility to continue the reconstruction process. Why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up to make a case that we need a fresh and differentiated approach towards mobilization on the ground. Be that as it may, as at the moment, apart from our resistance forces on the ground, the grassroots, for obvious reasons, do not really have as yet effective mobilization structures on the ground. Effective mobilization structures on the ground. And my suggestion is that we need to open up those spaces for engagement by engaging with old and established forces. I think that we need to adopt a more strategic approach towards engaging with people like John Frundi, Kawala, um and to a very significant extent, the Anglophone pundits of the regime. When you look at the structure of our resistance movement, you're going to realize that we have structured the resistance movement in such a way that we have given a lot of weight to the international community. We have directed a lot of our activism to pillars of the system, your governors, your SDOs, your GOs, to render the place ungovernable, to dismantle the symbols of control over the territory, and to ultimately get to a place where we create, we push back every symbol of La République Domination to go back beyond Matazan and back beyond the Mongo, which is a very appropriate strategy. And international community has a role to play. Dismantling the systems of representing La République government has a role to play. But we are in the process ignoring the biggest pillar of our resistance, or that which is fighting against the restoration movement. And these are your Anglophone elites that are part of the established order, both within the opposition and government, both within the CPDM and the SDF and parties like the CPP, and related movements. Now, I want to submit to us that that category of people are actually the biggest obstacle to our restoration. Even though we are focusing our attention on the Republic of Cameroon and the Biya government and the military and all of that, we need to maintain the pressure that we are putting upon those structures, but we cannot completely allow this category of people that I've described earlier on to be free agents because they are parasitic. Okay, they are parasitic because they are the established authorities. Look at it this way: whatever arrangement, whichever mediator wants to bring about from a consultative process to have a conversation about restoration, change, progress, moving forward, they would typically default to finding representatives of the people, people who are supposed to speak on behalf of the people. And I want to guarantee you that the on that table, as we would get the people, the members of the resistance movement to sit on the table, they are going to pull in the likes of the John Frundis, the likes of the Joshua Oshis, the likes of the Cardinal Tumis, the likes of the Kawalas, the likes of all of the people who, of course, the likes of the John Gutes and the Gogomos, and because whether we like it or not, they are stakeholders, right? They are stakeholders because they are Southern Cameroonians. They are just of a different conviction. They just have a different view, which in our view is selfish. It's not futuristic sufficiently. And the unfortunate reality or the unfortunate consequence of not engaging this category of people is the fact that they are not paying any price for the change that we are fighting for, but they would currently preparing themselves to rock up at the negotiation table and discuss the way forward. And that is very problematic. It's very problematic because they will remain consistent in their logic because we have not engaged them robustly. In an ideal world, we are supposed to have a robust internal conversation, persuading ourselves and persuading the majority of Southern Cameroons about the merit of our cause. We're supposed to have an internal conversation wherein we are raising the bar about us owning the processes and the outcomes. Summarily defines to getting our people to understand why we're involved in this fight, what kind of Southern Cameroons Ambazonia we want to build, the future that we have seen that we are trying to establish, and why it is in the best interest of all those who are part of our community to subscribe to that. The merit of breaking free from the Francophilic system, the merit of standing away from the dominance of La République Romaine, the merit of giving the responsibility of pursuing our own development, the merit of standing on the platform of fighting off the inefficiencies and the kleptocracy that has developed has developed and promoted by Yaoundé. The kind of educational system that would come out of our fight, the kind of health system that would come out of our fight, the kind of democratic model of governance, the kind of engagement with our international community that would be the outcome of our fight, and why it is the best interest that we adopt an approach that seeks to put the interest of the majority ahead of personal interest. This is the kind of internal conversation that we need to be having, because it is the maturity and the evolution of this kind of internal conversation that would constitute the substance of the reforms that would emerge out of any negotiated process. It is us being able to identify that no, this is why we are fighting, this is the kind of system we want to create, such that when we get to that stage, we can be unanimous about we have fought and paid all this price to build this kind of society. We cannot keep this bulk of people unengaged and just let this sit on the shoulders of our fighters to be able to eventually relegate the definition of the system to a bunch of consultants that will come along with the international mediator. We need internal conversation. We need internal mobilization. We need to speak to this category of people. Bearing in mind that whatever it is that's going to be the outcome of this resistance phase, it would have to be a negotiated process that will have to be consultative. The mindset of the international community is to default to a consultative process, a referendum, a national dialogue consultation, a participatory process that may boil down to a vote. And when we get to a point where international entities begin to get involved to be able to find a resolution to the conflict, the people who have fought the hardest would not necessarily have the loudest voice on that table. Which will lead me to my second video, my second audio on this subject, that we need to realize that when push comes to shove, everybody's going to be called to the consultative process. If you look at the mocking way in which Frundi refers to Joseph Weber in his interview, you're going to realize what these people are preparing for us, those of us that have decided to take up the hardline approach to resolution of the conflict. He said Joseph Weber cannot fire a single shot in war and then starts running. And Fruti then positions himself, which is a narrative that a lot of these parasites, I call them parasites have been peddling. Fruti says, I want to see change, but I don't want to see change on the graves of the people. I want to, he has a narrative that says that the people are caught up in between the forces, the firepower of the Amber Boys and the firepower of La République regime. The same kind of Bala rhetoric, polish my image, stand in the middle, be the good boy and the benign force. To ultimately say, Fruity is saying in plain words, I have ground power. I'm a man of the people. I have existing structures. The SDF is a party that has existed for 30 odd years. It has structures down in the grassroots. When you're going to ring the bell for mobilization on a post reconstruction phase, we are going to activate our structures on the ground. And they're going to immediately kickstart the process of being the voice that represents the people. So, all of this is English to say that we will do all this hard work like this. Some people will wake up and reap the benefits. If we do not start putting structures on the ground, this is the reason behind my recommendation earlier on of a tripartite alliance between IGK, Consortium, and AGOVC. AGOVC, together with the ADF, I think at this point have a very well elaborated resistance strategy in terms of defense on the ground. AGOVC needs the protection of IGK and the consortium because when the time is going to come for ultimate negotiations to be undertaken, any faction that comes out as being ultimately or ultra resistant will be taken out, will become the collateral damage of the negotiation process. Especially if on that table you have lots of people who have not lifted a finger to bring about change. Um, Let me give you an insight into what I'm talking about. Go back into the South African resistance movement. There was a certain guy called, not Steve Biko, Chris Hani. Now, Chris Hani was a member of the Nkondo Sizwe, was a military general. I think it was Russian trained. He was a ground soldier. He was our general FM. But for the difference that he was not only a soldier and a fighter, but he was also a political leader, I think, of the South African Communist Party, something to that effect, a secretary general. Um, Up to today, within the South African political dispensation, it's a known but hidden secret that this guy became a collateral of the negotiation to transition for democracy process because he was radical. Because when it came to the point where politicians jumped upon the negotiating table to negotiate a way forward for a new South Africa, when Chris Hani looked at the kind of concessions that his comrades, his buddies in the ANC was making, he stormed out of the process, and then essentially came up with an argument that says that he did not fight all the years in the bushes to come and settle for any arrangement that sees a liberation without a transfer of the land back to rightful owners. So when South Africa was going to put in place a democracy that is protecting property rights, the rights of all the citizens, essentially putting a freeze to the disposition process to say that even if you took land in the past, it's fine. Let us create a democratic society where the rights to ownership of property is respected and protected under the law, and then government will take upon itself responsibility to address the question of inequality. And Chris Hani said no. Christianity said that I fought this thing to see that the land be returned to the people, the locals. He was uh, no nonsense. He was the Cho Ayaba of the revolution. Don't blink. And and I'm not going to spew out any conspiracies. I'm not going to because I don't have the details. I don't have the evidence. But in the face of that resistance that came from this no nonsense guy, the long and short of that is that he was assassinated. Whether who is responsible for his assassination, it's a different story. Um, but when it came for a time for us to begin to give and take within the South African context, all the radicals were systematically silenced, and Mandela, with the help of the West, was propelled to the status of an international hero. In fact, most of you listening to me just like Nelson Mandela. You don't even know why you like him. But if you go down into the resistance against apartheid movement, you're going to realize that not to discount the contribution Mandela made, there were some people who paid an even heavier price. There were so many people in Robben Island prison with Mandela that a lot of people you don't even know their names or what was their contribution. There's a guy called Robert Sibukwe. Robert Sibukwe recently, when VP and I went to Robben Island, we got his story. Robert Subukwe was considered by the apartheid regime to be more dangerous than Mandela, to the extent that when he went to Robben Island, he was not kept together with the other prisoners. So Robben Island is a secluded prison, and then inside a secluded prison, he was kept in solitary confinement. He had a bunker of his own, separated from the rest of the prisoners. My people, just to get you to understand that when this process eventually play out, we need to be able to protect our own. So that is why I'm saying, and I could elaborate on this more. I think that AGOVC and ADF, they have taken the most risky component of this resistance movement. They need to be surrounded and protected by IG Care and the consortium. I think that IG Care, now these are my views, and I mean, I offer them very generously. This is one thing that makes me enjoy my participation in this struggle, is that I have the liberty to be able to say what I think. And I think that IGK has a very huge role to play in terms of international diplomacy. I think that IGK assembles um, a very diversified portfolio of very strategically placed individuals that has the possibility of winning us friends in the international community, of winning us future business partners in the international community, of being able to get on the table and negotiate us good deals. I feel that their strength is in diplomacy. And that if they maximize it, if they invested on that, of course, listen, they're experts and skilled people across the board, across all the movements. That's not my point. I feel that the strength is in diplomacy and that they would add a lot of value if they were able to concentrate on this aspect of diplomacy. I feel that the consortium is an entity that was built out of organizations that are grassroots based. That the consortium is a people's movement. You know, trade unions, transporters unions, traders unions. It has a semblance of an existing political structure that can be activated and used in favor of the revolution. And this is something that I think that is a reflection that is due for another day. But if we are going to succeed to counteract the ground forces that come from the existing structures of the CPDM and the SDF and all these old guards that have been part of the regime for the last 30 years, we need to have structures on the ground that mobilize and organize and educate and speak for our people. If we go through these resistance movements and ultimately get to a point where we need to let the SDF and the Kawalas of the world speak for us, they would parasitically benefit from an investment that they did not lift a finger to contribute towards. And with every passing day, same category has come. With every passing day, we see them showing those tendencies. You know, every time I listen to Fundi, he's a personal father of mine. You know, I have a lot of respect for him. But as a politician, he's an animal. Fundi is looking at us in the face and saying that, guys, you guys are going to dance this, dance like this, and come back and meet me. You know, I find it very funny. I find it very interesting because I see a book should be written about Fungi as a politician. You know, brilliant. He's made an exceptional contribution to this whole process. Um, but we need to have a strategy to deal with people like him. When I say deal with him, I mean engage with, to make sure that their contribution, because they are stakeholders, right? I say that again. Anybody who doesn't want to consider them stakeholders would be failing to understand the dynamics of our battle. So they are stakeholders that cannot be taken for granted. By no means, they cannot be taken for granted. What we need to do is to make sure that we come up and devise a strategy that counteracts their existing mobilization structures on the ground that they used before the struggle began, and that pulls in some of their support bases into our own organized structure. And my personal review and recommendation is that the structures of the consortium on the ground is a good start. Um, I feel that people like Agbobala, um, and there are some people that fall in that category. I feel that we need to develop a softer engagement stance towards them. They have taken a lot of compromised positions, positions which if all of us adopted, we would not have been able to make the kind of advance that we have made. But we need to be able to have an all Anglophone conversation. We need to talk to each other. We need to talk to each other. That is a given. That is going to ultimately define the quality of the outcomes and of the reforms that we are going to gain out of this resistance. We need to talk to each other. We have to talk to each other because this is our collective future. There is no Ambazonia that is going to be created for restorationists that abstracts and extracts all federalists. And there is no Ambazonia that is going to be created for federalists that does not have Ambazonians and restorationists involved. We are married to each other, come from the same schools, live in the same communities, go to the same churches. We are related to each other. This is our collective future. We obviously have very different views about how to secure that future. But the fact that the future is collective, it's beyond dispute. So we need to find ways of having useful engagements with each other. We need to move away from this obsession with the form of the state, independence, federal. I don't even want to talk about decentralization because that's a big joke, and start having content-based conversations about natures of reforms, qualities of reforms, calibers of reforms. What kind of reforms you want to see in the educational sector? What kind of reforms you want to see in the health sector? What kind of governance mechanism is it that we want to see? What kind of health system? How should the health system be structured? How different should it be from what we have at the moment? How are we going to do infrastructure development? Where will investments come from? How do we want to restructure our security sector? These are not federalist or restorationist debates. These are day-to-day life issues about our people, and the quality of the debates we have in those areas is going to ultimately determine the quality of the Amazonia, or the federated outcome that they dream of, which is not my position and is not a position of the restorationist movement. But the point I'm making as I stop on this specific audio and this specific video is that we need to develop smart ways of engagement, not just with the protagonists on a differentiated view perspective, but with our people on the ground. We need to engage all these big wigs within the CPDM, and engage them robustly and intensely. Look at John Gute in the face and say, "But Mr. Prime Minister, I understand what you stand to gain with the system and what you are fighting for. Do you not think that an independent Ambazonia is in your best interest and the best history of your children? Do you not think and that an educational system organized in a specific manner is supposed to have share certain characteristics?" And then I feel that when we, without discounting the emphasis of our focus up to this point, when we can zoom into this kind of content-based conversation, we would be in so doing laying the groundwork for a meaningful society that will be constructed post post this resistance phase. So let me stop with this video at this point, just to keep it short. I'm going to come back um, and make something similar, just a reflection of some analysis about what I think about the international community. May the resistance continue. We have made a lot of progress, and may God continue to protect our fighters on the ground.